Do this shit until they murder me.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another World of Tanks console video. My name is WZ, and today's video is all about the brand new Tier 8 premium Chinese tank destroyer, the Yazi WZ-120-1G-FT. Introduced along with the Alpine Tiger, the brand new Tier 8 heavy tank, premium heavy Chinese tank. The Yazi here is going to be your Chinese tank destroyer crew trainers, or I assume that's what you're going to use it for, considering that the King Dragon is basically the Chinese crew trainer of the nation. Whether or not you guys choose to pick this one up is pretty much on your own. Now, comparing this again with its co-release with the Alpine Tiger, I feel like this one was kind of a missed opportunity as well. Just in general, the color scheme of it, comparing that to the Alpine Tiger with that huge tigers on the side or lions, that thing just looks. I said lions, but it's really a tiger. I'm just joking. That thing just looks so much aesthetically better than this. Kind of look with the tracks on the front. It makes from afar, it makes it look like it's showing its teeth and laughing at you. But I don't know. Now, if you're wondering why this tank looks a little bit familiar, it's pretty much basically an SU-122-54. A lot of the Chinese tank destroyers borrow their design from the Soviet tech tree tank destroyers, up to the Object 268. That's pretty much the gimmick behind them. The Chinese tank destroyer was created on the Chinese server. The FT is the joke in it, because everybody, I don't know if it's true, so don't quote me on it, but everybody on the forums that I've read about it, the FT basically stands for fake tank or fictional tank. Whether or not that's true, I'm not too sure myself, but it's pretty much going along with the gimmick that the Chinese tank destroyers are a little bit better in a sense because they're better armored of the Soviet tank destroyers. So whether or not that's true, we'll see, but we'll check out some tank stats for this one and let you guys know exactly what you're in for. Let's head over to that now. So moving into the tank comparison of the Yazi WZ-120-1G-FT, man, that thing is still a mouthful to say. We're going to be comparing it to the Russian Tier 8 premium tank destroyer, the ISU-130. Now, keeping along the same lines as the Alpine Tiger with its Russian comparison, I decided to do the same thing with the Yazi, and that's just roughly to point out that again, most of the tanks are for Chinese and Russian tend to be the same as far as it goes. So moving into the comparison, we have the firepower stat to start this off. Now, before I get into that firepower stat, pardon for that part, is I want to include that both tanks get standard matchmaking and do not have preferential matchmaking, such as the Alpine Tiger and the IS-6. Figured I should put that in there before we get in. So jumping into the firepower stat again, the Yazi has the 47, and the ISU-130 has a 43. That is because of some of the gun characteristics. Don't worry, you'll be hearing a little bit more about it. The caliber of the Yazi WZ-120, as in the name, it's actually very odd that they didn't just put 122, because the caliber is a 122mm caliber gun, and as the ISU-130 clearly states, it uses a 130mm caliber gun. Very odd that they decided to go with that part anyway. Now, the base reload on the Yazi is 10.6 seconds. Keep that in mind. The ISU-130 beats it out. It has a 10.30 second reload, even though it has a bigger gun. And the base rate of fire for the ISU-130 will beat out the Yazi with 5.83, while the Yazi has a 5.66 rounds a minute. Now, one thing I should point out about this, and the reason you'll see the penetration jump up, of course, is the Yazi has a higher firepower stat because of its penetration, but also because it uses a Tier 10 122 caliber gun, while the ISU-130 uses a Tier 8 caliber tier 8 130mm caliber gun. Keep that in mind when we're going over this, and that's also explaining the firepower stat here. The penetration on the Yazi's standard round is 248mm of penetration on its AP rounds, 310 on its APCR rounds, or is it APCR or heat? I think it's heat. I want to say it's heat. And 61 on its HE. The ISU 130 has 215 on its AP rounds, and one of the interesting things about this tank is the fact that the ISU 130 has a second AP round as its premium round, and this is why you see the penetration drop, but the damage increases. This is similar to the SU-100Y, if any of you know about that tank. Its secondary round or premium round has higher damage but less penetration, which is what I feel like more of the premium rounds should carry. You have higher penetration in some cases but do less damage. In this case, it just has less penetration to do higher damage. Now, just to quickly point out that the second round is an AP with 187mm of penetration, and the HE round has 65mm of penetration. The damage for the Yazi has on its standard AP rounds is 440 on its 122. Sorry, I'm pausing a little bit just to make sure I'm not messing up numbers. 440 on its heat round, so it was heat rounds, just making sure. I was also checking that in the background here as well. Hear the clicking. 530 if you manage to penetrate a HE round. The ISU 130 has again that special premium round with the lower penetration. 490 on its standard AP rounds. On its premium AP rounds, it has 570, so that's a significant jump on it. And you have a 640 on its HE rounds. Again, HE rounds only do the full damage if you penetrate. RNG is always in there, but that's just the average damage of it. The shell cost for the Yazi WZ-120-1G-FT is 1,065 for its AP round, 4,800 for its heat round, 630 for its HE round. Relatively cheap. However, the ISU 130 tops it out with a 760 silver cost for its standard AP rounds. Its premium AP rounds are only 4,000 silver and 450 silver for its HE rounds. Now that's clearly saying to me that the ISU will become a little bit more profitable. However, again, keep in mind that it's using a tier 8 gun with lower penetration, so if you can actually penetrate it, that's one thing or the other. Shell velocity, 1,000 meters across the board for the Yazi on all its rounds, which for heat rounds, that's actually very incredible that they actually maintained the 1,000 meters a second on all its shells. The ISU 130 on its AP rounds, the standard ones, 898 meters a second. On its premium AP rounds, 900 meters a second, and on its HE rounds, 702. So you can see how it fluctuates compared to the Yazi. I don't know if that's because, I assume that's because of the shell type. However, it's all AP heat and HE having the same was very, very unique as far as that. I don't think I've ever seen another one do that, at least in my recent memory anyway. The ammo capacity of the Yazi wins out again with 35 rounds. That's 10 more rounds than the ISU 130, which only holds 25 rounds as a max ammo capacity. Now DPM, I did something a little bit interesting. I decided to bump it up. With the Yazi, it has a 2,490.4 damage per minute. And the ISU 130, again, this is where the unique thing comes in. You'll see two numbers here, or two sections. 2,856.7 rounds a minute if you're using the standard AP rounds. If you decide to load the premium AP rounds, you can increase and keep in mind, 187 millimeters. You can increase the DPM up to 3,323.1 damage per minute. Now that is very good, but again, keep in mind that even though you're having a higher penetration or a higher damage, the penetration on those rounds drop, and 215 to begin with in tier 8s isn't really all that. It can still hold up a little bit, better than some of the other premium tanks. But the 187, you clearly have to be hitting weaker armored tanks or lightly armored tanks, or the side of armored tanks. Going down into the aim time, the ISU 130 has 2.1 seconds, which beats out the Yazi's 2.9. Its dispersion 0.37 at 100 meters. It's equal on both the Yazi and the ISU 130. 0.49 when moving the tank on the ISU 130 beats out the 0.57 on the Yazi, and 0.75 when rotating the tank. I thought it was rotating turret, but it's rotating tank, versus the 1.16 on the Yazi. So clearly the ISU 130 is holding out better in as far as gun stats go. You have 15 degrees of gun elevation on the Yazi, and 14.30 on the ISU 130. 6 degrees of gun depression on the Yazi versus the 8 degrees of gun depression that you can have on the ISU 130. Now 6 degrees isn't really all that much, but it's impressive to see that the ISU 130 actually has 8 degrees. I didn't know that prior to it. I own the tank and I've rarely used it, and I think I might try to take it out a little bit more because of this 8 degrees and really try to see how much we can get some shots in. Hull traverse speed for the Yazi is actually better with a 42 degrees a second, which beats out the abysmal 28 degrees a second on the ISU 130. Mobility stat for the Yazi is better with a 26 beating out the 13 on the ISU 130, with a engine of 580 horsepower on the Yazi to the 520 on the ISU 130. 16.11 horsepower or power to weight ratio, horsepower to ton, beats out the 11.6 bigger engine, better power to weight ratio on the ISU 130. The 12% fire chance on this tank as well beats out the 15 on the ISU 130. 50 kilometers per hour top speed forward beats out the ISU 130's 38. 20 in reverse on the Yazi will beat out the 14 on the ISU 130. 1 degree or on terrain resistance, you have a 1 beating out the 1.1 on the ISU 130, 1.2 beating out the 1.3, 2 beating out the 2.1. So these are marginally different in ground resistance. However, the power to weight ratio on the Yazi is definitely better, and that forward top speed allows you to get into positions a little bit quicker, far quicker than you would in the ISU 130. And that's definitely a little bit more helpful along with that penetration. The 2.9 second aim time is a little bit different. You can get it down again. That's just a base stat. You can get it down using vents, the enhanced gun lane drive, or using the consumable, the premium nation consumable. So that's also one thing to keep in mind. The survivability stat of this tank is 29, beating out the ISU 130's 27. It has 1100 hit points. For a tier 8 tank destroyer, that's actually fairly decent, beating out the, or premium tank destroyer I should say, beating out the 1000 on the ISU 130. A 220mm to 200mm overall armor thickness, beating out the 20 on to 115 on the ISU 130, with 120 on the front of the hull of the tank. And effective, I think you can get about 180. So where the 200 is, again, normally around the gun mantlet, right there. You can get lucky to have some people just shoot the gun mantlet sometimes. The front of the ISU 130 is only 90. The side of the Yazi is 80, and the rear is 40. Now the ISU 130 actually has better side and rear armor with 90 on the side and 60 on the rear. However, again, these are very low, and considering the sheer penetration on the tanks that you will meet, most of the time you will be penetrated. So don't ever think of taking either of these tanks to the front line. They're meant for, as bad as their dispersion is, for sniping. Well, technically 0.37 isn't really all that bad, but I'm just pointing out most Chinese and Russian derp guns tend to be like that. However, the 122 and 130 are actually fairly decent on their respective tanks. Concealment stat is 76 and the ISU 130 is 47. Now again, 0.44 and 0.28 is because the Yazi comes with a premium camo on it, and the ISU 130 that I have does not. So 0.28 on the ISU 130 when stationary, and 0.17 when moving. Again, those are very low, simply because this is a base tank without any camos on it. Spotting stat is 67 for the Yazi, and this is where it falls behind, as it has the ISU 130 has 78 with a base view range of 380, a base radio range of 730. The base view range on the Yazi is 360, and the radio range is 600, meaning that even though you want to snipe sometimes, unless you bump up this view range, which I highly recommend, as you'll see from the gameplay following after the in-game armor model viewer, you'll see that I take advantage of the view range quite a bit often, more than most people would in a tank destroyer, and I would much rather use this increase the view range on this tank, as the low profileness does give it a better concealment stat to begin with as well. Tank costs. Now the ISU 130 is not currently on sale, but however the base tank of that is worth 12,500 gold, and you have a 13,040 gold for the Yazi WZ-120-1G-FT base model or base tank. Now this, again, I always stress this in these videos, is only if Wargaming were to sell the base tank as is. Whenever they sell these tanks, it's tends to be in a bundle. So unfortunately, for saying that that's just the standard tank cost and it differs from what you see in the store, that's just to reflect that they add extra stuff on it to have a little bit of stuff for you to be able to use. Premium rounds, the extra garage slot, and a 100% trained crew are stuff that you kind of have to pay for with these bundles. Now your premium bonuses is where you judge it, and believe it or not, 50% silver bonus on the Yazi WZ-120-1G-FT and 15% experience bonus are very good for a tiered premium tank destroyer. However, 60% on the ISU 130 and 15% premium bonus experience earned definitely puts the ISU 130 in a different league. And although, again, the 60% silver does come at a great advantage, since the shell cost of this tank is definitely low, but 50% isn't too bad, considering that the Yazi will definitely punch a little bit better with the higher penetration to those tier 9s and 10 tanks that you tend to see with tank destroyers than the ISU 130. However, any ISU 130 driver that I've come across, this tank is definitely profitable, and the few times I've gotten to play it, I've made close to 100,000, even though I run the premium account, but 100,000 silver regardless, and that's per game. When you do, that was an average of 3,000 damage. That's pretty good per game. A few games and I could basically earn 500,000 silver. However, rather than just continuing on about this, I know you guys want to get over to the gameplay, but before that, let's head over into the armor model viewer to give you guys a quick little bit of details on that, and then head into the gameplay. So, going into the in-game armor model viewer of the tank, you will see that the Yazi is a little bit pretty decently armored, actually. Now, 6 degrees of gun depression, using that right about here. Just imagine the gun pointing down to about right where my mouse is. This front plate up on the top is 120 millimeters thick. However, when you use the 6 degrees of gun depression, you can get it to about 250 millimeters of effective armor, and this little center here will be about 280. However, most of the time people just think, hey, it's a little tank destroyer, just aim for it, and will pretty much penetrate. Now, that would be the case if someone were just aiming flat at you. You will get those, tier 7s, tier 8s that sometimes just bounce right off the front. But keep in mind that the lower plate on this is only 80 millimeters thick, and that's pretty much where the frontal weak spot of it is. Pretty much this entire thing, because the Yazi does not get preferential matchmaking. Most of the tier 8, 9s, and 10s will just eat through you. When you're top tier going against tier 8s or some of the tier 8, 7s, and 6s, you could pretty much use that 6 degrees and the top hiding this lower plate right here. you pretty much get around 250 millimeters of effective armor, and no one should be able to go through you unless they start using some premium rounds or heat rounds that say screw your armor. That tends to happen. Don't try side scraping with it. Again, tank destroyer, you're mostly in the back, but just to give you guys a heads up, there's this huge gap in there that will pretty much this section right here does not count. It counts as spaced armor, so there's a slight angle right here, but the right below that you pretty much have an auto penetrate. I mean, you get some tier 6s that just don't have the penetration, some tier 7s, a few of those, but most importantly, you'll pretty much get penned. So for anyone who just wants to get rid of it, aim right here, you'll detrack it as well as do damage at the same time. You will also do it if you aim it at the sides, aim at the gear. You should do damage and track it on either side. This thing is not artillery friendly, as you can see from the top, and considering that we don't have those PC artillery mechanics that most of you have been hoping for, yeah, you get hit, you pretty much die. 1100 hit points is decent for a tier 8 tank destroyer. However, 1100 for an artillery, being able to penetrate this is gonna be very fun. The rear plate, again, everything on this tank from the sides and the rear is pretty much gone. It's pretty much a penetrate from any tier 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The front is where you pretty much want to keep it. Just keep it a little bit angled. Like I said, 120 millimeters on the top, and just using the slight 6 degrees of gun depression, you should be able to take up to 250. That'll help you keep alive a little bit longer than you would have if you didn't angle, and just put the gun to work. The armor on tank destroyers isn't necessarily where you want to be. It's mostly being able to use the gun effectively and sniping from afar. But just to give you that quick heads up on that, so that you're not one of those few players that's just like, it's angled right, I can bounce it. No, just this alone, I believe, is just 180 of effective because of the angling, and unless you use that 6 degrees again, is where your 250 will come in. So without further ado, let's head over into the gameplay. So starting off the replays in this will be one of two. This map is Himmelsdorf, and I will be playing it in the Yazi WZ-120-1G-FT, if that wasn't clear enough. Now, one thing you will see is that my view range is maxed out, because as I stated, one of the things you definitely want to do is increase the view range on your Yazi, as 360 base is pretty bad when you're using a tier 8 tank destroyer. So you always want to focus on increasing that number fairly quickly, using either the vents, perks, rammer, or vents, perks, or Food Nation consumable, as long, let's see, Brothers in Arms, Recon, Situational Awareness. Am I missing any? I don't think so. So, on Himmelsdorf, I decided to pull back and thoroughly test out the view range. Now, you might call this camping. I call this testing. You will see me be very hesitant in this game because of the view range. I was very cautious not to overextend myself. Now, I could have put a little bit more, but I think on this one I ended up going with coated optics instead of binocular telescope. Now, that is probably a better choice in most cases. I just didn't want to I don't think I wanted to stay still long enough with the tank, because again, it's a very mobile tank that the binoculars would probably just keep turning off and on. The game does go by very quickly, so you'll start seeing enemies as well as teammates drop fairly fast. Keep that in mind as we keep going through. Now, you will notice this guy right here pushing up the heavy tank. I believe that is the IS-6. Nope, this one's the 112. And the IS-6 comes on a little bit later. I think the one on the right is a Gornish or a KV-5. I'm not too sure. Same tank, but, heroes versus non-heroes. Yep, was the Gornish. The 112 is still poking out. I was actually pretty surprised I didn't penetrate him on that bend. And here's the IS-6. And boom, 453 right into the front lower plate of that tank. IS-6 just keeps pushing through. That's his only option at this point if he wants to get out there. Now this one, ends up going right to the rear and bouncing off the rear side of that tank, which had me mystified for a little bit until I started realizing, no, the effective armor on that tank is, again, as I pointed out with the previous tank review for the Alpine Tiger, quite a trollish effective armor on that tank. Kind of puts a lot of people off. So the Gornish has been just pretty much walked right through the entire side. Our teammates went mostly to the top, so I decided to pull back up here. Now look at the dispersion, and 444, just slightly higher with a 440 average, 444 just a little bit on the Spanzer 1C. I was actually expecting to roll a little bit higher than that. So the Gornish is over here terrorizing the team, so I decided to pull back, and he noticed right away, so pretty much didn't have a chance there of being able to bounce anything. And it was actually interesting that you landed that shot right up on top. However, we don't have much time to pay attention to the Gornish, as again, this IS-6 has pretty much been there since he pushed up. Nobody on the team decided to come to this corner. They pretty much hugged the top for most of the game. And do I get this shot in? Nope. Trollish as ever in dispersion. That's why I feel one of the Chinese and the Soviets pretty much have in common. Their dispersion is just... Their higher caliber guns, 122s, are just really trollish on any tank you use. Keep that in mind when you drive those tanks. T-30 down there just pretty much shot him. And I'm going to mess up here, but this IS-6 is going to give me two opportunities. First one, right up into the top, right above him. You can see where I'm aiming, right to the commander's hatch, just barely visible there. And he's not really giving much of anything to not aim at. So, commander's hatch goes right in. This Tiger 1 got really lucky in this case. I was barely there. Just a little bit more. Just a fraction of a corner. Would have been able to get good shots into him. So pulling up, you can see our team again. They conquered the top, so they start pushing back. So I decided I'm going to try to get some shots down here. Increase that DPM. Or put out that DPM, increase that damage. And this T-30 made it a little bit easier in this case. I got the shot out, I just didn't track him. And I'm going to do something a little bit stupid that could have almost cost me this one. However, I just want to point this out. The T-29 and T-30 have some trollish turrets. I just went through the top of the turret of that tank. However, he made me pay quite significantly. Again, the front of it is only 120, and you can only get it to 185 millimeters of effective armor. There was no way I was going to bounce that shot. I just didn't expect I was going to actually be alive after that shot. So I have the medium tank over there being a good distraction, so I pull up and finish off the T-30. The IRC-152 is pretty much here. And tracked again. Pulls up into him. The medium, I think, gets this one. Trying to get the shot before the last guy comes around, and never mind. 5 kills, 11 pens, 2 assisted, 5 crits, 2 enemies spotted. Not overall bad, and I just again want to point out that I had a better time playing this tank than I did the heavy tank, and I don't know if that's just because I like tank destroyers more, I'm not too sure. This is a second class mastery badge with 3,782 damage, 390 damage block, which surprised the heck out of me, 11 pens, 1,711 base experience. Is a second class mastery badge, 3,782 damage caused, 5 enemies destroyed, 91,000 base credits earned. This tank was really puzzling. People were doing really well in the Yazi, and I could see that just in the sheer number of battles I had to play just to try and get a first class mastery badge. This being a second was just one of those things that just baffled my mind and definitely had me a little bit more confused. No worries, that's only part 1. We're going to be moving into part 2. Now here we're going to be doing Erlenberg. Now if you don't know where Erlenberg is, Derpenberg Suicide River. Camp side of the map, camp the other side of the map. Hope the enemy team pushes up so that you can snipe them. We're going to be seeing a lot of that in this game. Now, 1,711 from the last base experience from the last game was just a second class mastery. Just shows you that people are enjoying playing the Yazi more than they do the Alpine Tiger. A first class mastery on a loss of 1,170, I think was the experience on the Alpine Tiger. Definitely kind of said a lot about that being a first class, and if we did win, it was going to be an ace tanker, which would have been the only one I would have had for that tank. The Yazi, no matter how well I did, and I did fairly well, I could not get an ace tanker in because people were having great games in this. Now, right off the bat, going into this game, our team lemmings down one side. The AMX 5100, despite me telling him, come back, you're a great heavy tank, great and mobile heavy tank, decided to rush the other side of the map with no support. I've done this a few times on accident because I wasn't paying attention to my map. But the minute I notice my team is on one side of the map, I rush back the opposite way. Unfortunately for the AMX 5100, he didn't. And that was probably what cost the rage that is about to follow. Spotted. Not by one. There's two heavy tanks there. He's already down. And done. Centurion Action 10 puts him out of his misery. Our team is still lemming down the side. Now, I want to point out, thank you to Zero and the two other artillery. Oh, wait, no, this is Slayer and the two other artillery that's on our team. I think it's Slayer. Was it Slayer or was it Zero? I don't remember. One of them played the artillery. I want to say it's Slayer, because it was the SU-14-2. So, yeah, I'll go with Slayer. If it's U0, I apologize. And that's them having fun with me. Hold on, let's see. We can see this name. Yep, Slayer. Lorraine 155-50. Okay, so that's a tier 8 artillery. Now, here's why I say boosting out the view range on your tank is actually great. I'm not firing, I'm just spotting. And I'm doing the light tank's role in this position. And I actually effectively use the armor to bounce a shot. Again, I was actually surprised. The artillery were actually focusing on this side. I basically took a light tank's job in this game and used my Yazi as a spotting tank. Notice my entire team is on the upper part of the map here, up on A and B line, just pretty much going to be going down that side. While all the artillery, we have 4 artillery on our team, Zero and the tank destroyer managed to stay here. The T-110E5 pushed across that water right there, and he just pretty much fell straight down. It's actually pretty funny. So you can see again, all I'm doing is trying to spot, pull back, and have my artillery do the work. Which, if you're a light tank driver, this is actually how you're supposed to scout, man. I'm just pointing this out. I don't put out a lot of damage in this game, and I think that's what pretty much settled it for me for not getting an ace tanker, because I didn't do a lot of damage. However, the assisting damage in this game is definitely one to keep. Look at that. One right after the other. That Conqueror definitely had to cry about that. He just got hit for almost full health. And the E50, do I get a shot on him? Nope. Bounces off the top of that. That's just poor aim. That's the artillery splashed me on that one. Boom! Payback for that one though. So the artillery, again, the top of this tank is very weak. Do not stay out in the open and have an artillery hit you. I was actually surprised. I believe that was the M53-55, because he didn't kill me. Here I am, just basically staying up in the corner, maxing out the view range. Again, you could max it out even more if you were to use the binocular telescope. Coded optics for me with recon and situational awareness, as well as vents. pretty much maxed this out for me. That I think it was at, effectively this should be around 430 millimeters of view range, if I remember right. I don't have that exact number down. Again, I have the bonus sheet on how to apply your bonuses to your tanks on the Excel spreadsheet. If you guys ever want to just pause the video through that to be able to just calculate how much bonus experience you get for your tank when using vents, rammers, perks, or all of them at the same time. So you can see again our team pushed up mostly to the side. However, all I'm doing is effectively keeping the artillery alive, spotting it out for them, and taking shots while I can. And those E50s, man, there's not just one, there's two over there. They're getting punished for just staying. They end up rushing me towards the probably next minute or so in this game. But look at it. This is literally the role of a light tank. Very mobile tank destroyers can play that role. However, because the front of this tank is the front armor on this tank is so weak, I didn't expect to be able to bounce any shots. However, just camping bush. Boom again. Putting in effective shots against these guys, they were just baffled. I was baffled that I was even able to do this well. You can see again, keeping the view range, that gun, 248 millimeters of penetration, definitely holds up a lot better against tier 10s. Now I did get the side of an E50M, but even then, just the fact that I'm still able to snipe 1,000 meters a second on the shell velocity on all its shell types is definitely handy. Now I don't tend to fire a lot of premium rounds even when I have them loaded. Even if I'm about to die, I don't love the premium rounds. They're pretty much there just because it gives me the option to. And if I ever really feel like just throwing gold at someone, it's pretty much the go-to. The only tank you will ever see me really go balls deep with premium rounds is pretty much the average Death Star. And if you're a Death Star driver and you don't shoot premium rounds, well, you're just missing the fun in that tank. So E50s are definitely, along with that M48 pattern, he's about to go down. The E3 is going to rush him and lose majority of its health, 90%. I'm still trying to stay in this position and spot out the E50s so that they don't rush us. Again, Zero didn't move from his location. We're all tier 8s in this game going in tier 10 matches. That's another thing I should point out, is that majority of your games, even when you're in tier 10s in the Yazi, you definitely feel like you can do a lot better because of that penetration than you would in let's say the ISU 130. That wasn't a comparison, because even though you can snipe, you definitely have better luck with the penetration and penetrating with the higher penetrating round. Even though the ISU 130 has that 130, overmatch mechanics will definitely put you in favor of the 130. However, the lower penetration just holds the tank back ever so slightly. I do like the fact that the ISU 130 has 490 alpha, and the 122 on the Yazi does not, so that's a little bit of a downer. However, still great reload for it, and I'm just, again, still assuming that scout roll right here. 13 assisted. This tank is definitely fun to play. I didn't give it enough credit when I was just looking at it from the in-game model when I first loaded up. E50 is pushing up. Now, one E50 is about to pull off to my right, so they did this smarter tactic where one was about to rush me, and look at that. Boom, right on the lower end. However, the other E50 is off to my right. And kaboom. Jagdpanzer E100 hits it off. Now, we're still ahead, but notice that we have 4 artillery. So this means that, again, even though we're ahead, we're technically behind the tank because artillery is not really meant to go up on the front and spot. Now, I've been spotting the entire game for our team the entire game, so I decided to stop camping in the back and start pushing up in a little bit. And do I recommend it in a tank destroyer? Not really. However, if it's a game like this where nobody else wants to do it and you have decent mobility as well as view range, take advantage of the view range and mobility and get into some positions to be able to get out your team some spots or give yourself some damage in there. And I believe this is where the M48 decides to stay right on the edge. There's a slight gap there. The E3 pushes ahead. I actually thought he was going to push him into the water, but I assume he didn't do that because he didn't want to drown. And he pays dearly for it. As you're about to see the M53 pretty much nail him right there, 922. It's pretty hefty. I think something else hits him because he was on 10% of his health. Yep, 504. I assume that was the other tank destroyer. M48. E3 is about to reload. M48 is about to be put out of his misery. And give it a second. Give it a second. Done. E3 takes him out. Takes out the view range for there because the M48 Patton has very good view range. Always keep that in mind when you're going against it. M48 Patton has definitely one of the best medium view range on any of the mediums in the game. Light tanks, I think it's the Sheridan and the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen, the Tier 10 German light tank, is 420 base, so they have a higher potential, or equal, I think, to the M48 Patton. But because of the high profile of the M48 Patton with that cupola, you can definitely spot out a lot further, as well as be spotted a lot further. Whereas the light tanks, you still have a little bit of advantage. So I got tired of camping in the back in this game, so I decided to pull up finally and help my team get a little bit more spots. You can see I'm sticking to the edge using the view range to be able to do that. M53 gets spotted and taken out one shot, 450. A wee little baby is destroyed. I laughed about that. I really did. I laughed for a second, which is why you see me doing this drive off, because I was laughing and not paying attention to where I was driving. So, got wee little baby. Still funny when I'm saying it. One already down. Two tank destroyers left, and one artillery. And the E100 takes out the Death Star on the other side. And I believe I'm about to pull up on the M43 or T92 in the last part of it. I think it's the T92 in this one. Now, the M53 got a roll of 450. The roll on this gun is 440. 440. T92 has 500 hit points and rolls for 413. I was baffled and I was like, why does this game always troll me in the end? I still reload enough time to be able to finish him off. However, that still just annoyed me. Every time I'm about to finish off, I finish off one artillery in one shot. The second one always gives me a pain and becomes trollish. E100 takes out the enemy E3, and we win the game. Now, be baffled and amazed at what you're about to see. Tank destroyer doing light tank jobs. 5,612 is impressive for a tank destroyer to do. Assisted, doing a scout's job. 2,991 damage, 400 blocked. First class mastery. Now, here's my thing about this, guys. That's a first class mastery. When you see the base experience on this, yeah, that's exactly right. Oh, no worries. It did that because I ended up backing out because I wasn't paying attention. Here you go. Oh, what did I do? This button right here. So, I ended up going back and double checking because I just clicked through on that one because I was like, first class, it's not worth it. However, again, these are one of the best games I've had in the tanks. 2,166 base experience in this tank should have been an ace tanker. That means with a 2,166 base experience on this tank, being it only a first class mastery, you guys who drive this tank are monsters. I just want to point that out. You are monsters at tank destroying because normally this would run any tank with an automatic ace tanker. 2,000, some tanks are 1,800. For a tier 8 premium tank to have 2,166 be a first class mastery, you guys are probably having some monstrous games to begin with, and I congratulate you guys on enjoying this tank so much. When I first jumped into the stats of this, thought this was going to be one of those basic average tanks, tank destroyers. Probably going to lose out on the spectrum to the more mobile and lightly armored one, such as the German Scorpion G or the Scorpion for the standard tank. However, in the end, the Yazi just proved that people enjoy the lower profile tanks. I am baffled. 137,350 base silver earned was definitely one of those higher games. Again, the Yazi is very profitable. 60% on its, or 50% on its premium silver bonus with the 440 alpha damage. You can definitely, with a higher penetration, you can definitely penetrate more rounds and definitely have a higher silver earned rate. This all depends on whether or not, again, you guys decide to not use, whether you use premium time or non-premium time. In my opinion, the 248 millimeters of penetration will definitely help you penetrate a lot more rounds. The shell cost might be a little bit higher for it, but in the end, is it worth it? Probably. So final thoughts on this tank. The Yazi definitely blew away my expectations as far as being able to earn ace tankers. I enjoyed playing that tank more than I did the Alpine Tiger, and that was definitely more noticeable in just the gameplay that you guys saw. That the Yazi just, again, it's one of those tanks that really kind of threw me off as far as how to play it a little bit. Not necessarily how to play it, but how to approach it with the stats that it had and improve on the ones that I thought was probably more beneficial. Again, if you own this tank or if you guys purchase this tank, spec it out for some view range. It definitely benefits from what you saw. It definitely benefits from being able to have better view range, or you can choose the latter and go for camo rating. That's also a great option. Again, it comes with a base camo, a universal camo, very good as well because of its low profileness. You can definitely be able to spec it out pretty decently, as well as using that nation consumables to still keep up the view range. 12% fire percentage chance will definitely help you in swapping out the fire extinguisher again for the consumable. I always recommend it on tanks, your tier 8 tanks that can make the silver, to cover the 20,000 silver that the premium consumables tend to cost. Only load one premium consumable, and I always recommend the nation consumable. Larger repair kits and large med kits are kind of iffy on those, but those are for a different topic discussion. Yazi, is it worth it? Yes. In the end, it's a great tank destroyer to have. It's going to help you with your Chinese tank destroyers, at least getting a little bit hang of it. It's not going to be your Chinese screw trainer, again, as I pointed out. That right goes to the King Dragon, the tier 8 Type 59 King Dragon. That's definitely the crew trainer of the nation. That's specified with specific crew bonus. However, if you want a good profitable tank, the Yazi is definitely up your alley, as well as the Alpine Tiger if you can handle driving the heavy tanks without gun depression. That's all for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully this tank review was helpful. I know these always tend to be long, but look forward to the next tank review, as I believe that one will be out probably by next week. I have other videos planned for the rest of this week, and hopefully that comes to fruition. I always say I do things, but then I procrastinate a little bit. That's on a different note. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you the next time. Have a good night.